You're here at the Capital Irish with two projects and to do a very important introduction. I was just wondering if you could let us know what your kind of jam-packed festival schedule is and what you're supporting.
Well, it's amazing to be here. Now, the first thing to know is, and because you've got a film here too, Gemma, but we're screening in this beautiful cinema called the Silver Theatre, which has been around for about 100 years. And it's everything you can imagine. It's Art Deco, all those little light bulbs, amazing history. I was just looking at a photograph of it today from the 1930s, I think, with Shirley Temple, her name in lights at the top of it. And just to be part of that kind of history with your films, it's just wonderful to be, walking in the same footsteps is just brilliant. So I've got a film called Báite and Daniel O'Connell. It's Canada Cine Cahars. It's just been released next week. So we're currently showing it in a few festivals around the world, and it's just really exciting because it's a small film set in the west of Ireland, murder mystery, in Irish, and you just don't know how this is going to play with audiences, but so far so good, they love it. And then we have a documentary which I made about Daniel O'Connell, which plays as well, which is very much a story of our times because he's a man who sort of fights for emancipation and human rights, which we could use a little bit more of these days.
Yes, 100%. That unfortunately, there's a lot of things that are quite timely. In terms of Báite as well, it's a beautiful period piece, and it looks back at a very specific point in Irish history in terms of the rights of women. Then even bringing it back into this, I was wondering if you could tell me about where the idea came from and when you came on board.
So Báite is based on a book by Sheena Labert called The Lake, and Sheena adapted her book for screen, so she wrote the screenplay as well. And you're so right, there's an awful lot going on. I mean, at a very surface level, it's a murder mystery. Body gets found at the side of a lake. It has who that person is has massive impact for everybody in the village, and there's a lot of suspicion. Who is it? Who did it? What happened? But then in the undercurrent of all that, there are just these great themes which are about an old Ireland struggling with a new Ireland. Peggy, the heroine, sort of manifests or is trying to save this pub, but she wants to turn it into a new business. I kind of see her as very much the embodiment of the Ireland that we have now. She's struggling and fighting against old forces to try and create a new vision for Ireland. Albeit it's our pub, but in the pub is embodied all of these things that she imagines could be. But all her siblings are leaving the country because that's what it was like back in the 70s.
And it's really, really wonderful. And I would say the performances are gorgeous, and Cine Cahar is a good scheme. Like it's a good chunk of funding, but probably like the fact that it's a period piece. Was there any kind of trepidation there when you were kind of signing on to go, oh my God, it's set in the 70s? How can we afford this?
You're right about that there was a lot of worries, a lot of concerns. I mean, to start with, Cine Cahar and Screen Ireland were so brave to fund it because it's not only set in the 70s, it's also set in the 1950s. So we have two periods that both need their own production design, costumes, and then we also have actors who are playing parts in both periods. For a long time we thought, do we have different actors of different ages in both? But we felt, no, let's just bite the bullet and try and cast people who are aged somewhere in the middle of the two periods, and then age them younger and age them older. And that seems to have worked out. The actors also are incredible who did those roles. But the period thing, it was exciting. It was a good challenge to take on. And one of the first things we decided is let's make the 1970s feel like really modern. So everything in it, oh yeah, I could drive that car, I'd love that, or I'd love those clothes, or I'd love... So although everything's very authentic 70s, it sort of feels like a space you'd like to inhabit today.
Mm. Oh, it is, that shot of that like classic car going over that hill and the beautiful lake. It's very, very cinematic. Do you, coming on as a director and then working on your own documentaries, is it a kind of welcome break to do something, that's so visually stylized, and then, when you're editing and writing and in the process, what are the different hats like then to...
Do you know, it's funny. I started out in the film business, so as a trainee and in locations and as an assistant director, first assistant director, working on films like Far and Away and Michael Collins. And so movies is in my blood. And then when I was in my 30s, I got into making documentaries and I just loved it. I absolutely adored making documentaries. And now I've done a bit of drama over the last few years. This is my first movie. My God. Now you're going to laugh, but I think documentaries are way harder than movies, right? Because with movies, you've got a script, you've got actors, and you've got this big crew. I mean, even on a small cine car film, you're still working with 40, 50 people. And all of them are leaning into to making this film together. Like, it's so collaborative and absolutely thrilling for that. On a documentary, you're just working one or two people. There is no script. You're finding it all the time. You're struggling to make a shot of a street, a shot of a building, a shot of a sky, a shot of some birds mean something. Like, so it's lots of uninflected shots, and you're trying to cut them together to form something that has deep meaning. So you're always struggling to find the film, and it's only the very, very final day when you lock the offline that you go, oh, now I see the film. Whereas with a feature film, you literally shoot the scene and you have a rough, assembly in the afternoon or in the evening, and you're already seeing how the scene is working. Very, very different disciplines. But the two kind of cross-fertilize for me. So I tackle the documentaries now with a 3 or 5 act structure. And always try and see the characters, always have the story turn every couple of minutes like you would in a movie. And then with I don't know, the movies, are they being influenced by documentaries? I don't know.
That's it. I suppose there's like the truth, and then there's the truth. Like there's the emotional truth and the capturing that visually and telling the story visually. I suppose in terms of, do you like to take a break in between each one? Do you have a slate of things and, when the funding goes through, it goes? Or do you consciously take a break between each one? And then you also do sort of commercial work and recording. And just how do you find that works as well in terms of your own career and what you want to do, finding the balance there?
I like working all the time. So I just keep working. I love it. I love the way that if you have 2 or 3 projects going, they're talking to each other, even though they're completely unrelated. I'm doing a documentary at the moment about the transatlantic slave industry, or whatever, that appalling travesty that happened to last over 4 centuries, where millions and millions of Africans were taken from their homes and put into forced labor in the Caribbean so that money could be made by the European powers, right, and by the wealthy and by the elite. But that documentary holds hands with the Daniel O'Connell documentary very much. Like and it also connects very much to one I made years ago on the Irish famine called The Hunger, which happens around the same time. So there's a conversation going on between all of the documentaries, and I'm already reading and thinking about the next thing I'm going to do next year. So that's how the head works. The next movie I want to make is kind of set in a similar period with some shared themes. So the whole thing is kind of, all the ideas are kind of cross-referencing and talking to each other.
Brilliant. In terms of probably getting your head into that space, that really, really works well. What's it like then sharing, 2 for 1 at this festival? It's probably unusual, is it, to have two big long form projects screening together in a festival, to share them with both local audiences, then you have, European, and now we're in America. Do you feel like they're received different? Because, we've such a big expat population here in the States.
We were talking earlier about how your film was received the other day by the audience here, and I was thinking when listening to you how if you showed it again tomorrow here in the same city in the same cinema, you're going to get a different response. Like every single audience you show something to has a different feeling about it. And that's what's so thrilling. Sometimes people don't like your film, and the next night they love it, right? So there's a vibe. There's something happens. Something magical happens in a cinema, in a room, when people watch something together.
There's also studies done about how far away it lands from when that person has eaten. So if people are hungry, they're really unforgiving.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I get that. And it's also like really good and interesting when people don't like your film, because that's part of it too, right? So I don't think it matters that we're in America or that we might be in Ireland or like the things that made. We've screened them in Africa, we've screened them in China, we've screened them in South America, we've screened them all over the place, and you get equally an equally resonant response from audiences all over the world, no matter what their nationality or culture is, if the film is true to itself.
Yeah, and I suppose it's people's connection to the work as well. You know, like. The one thing about Báite that works so well is it is, you know, on some level it deals with these big themes, you know, but at the core of it is a feuding family, a community struggling, and, you know, the outsider coming in and putting, you know, their own opinions on it. And something like that translates all over the world. It isn't just something local to Ireland. Do you, again, find maybe in terms of documentary, if people are watching it, they've already bought into the premise? Or that people respond differently if they're coming to it, especially, you know, like a European audience watching, you know, that might know that much about Daniel O'Connell sitting in.
You're so right. You make me think for a moment about Sheena's brilliant script and how she sketches that the relationships between those four siblings is just brilliant, and it is universal, and you're going to get that anywhere in the world, right? Those tensions. With the documentaries, absolutely. Like they're I mean, it's a well-worn path now, or trope that people find the Irish experience really, really interesting. You know, the history we've had, how we managed to somehow maintain a sense of our own culture and our own selves despite that history, is something people find fascinating. That it's possible to be oppressed and to have, you know, all your options sort of reduced almost to the point that you can't even function for 3 or 4 or 5 centuries and still make it through that. So people in a lot of other countries, I mean, particularly somewhere like China or India, where we screened a bunch of the documentaries, they found it really, really interesting. They found it fascinating. We showed in 1916 in Moscow 10 years ago, and my God, the response to that. The Q&A went on for about an hour and a half afterwards, and people wanted to know the blueprint for revolution, which I obviously didn't let them know too much, just watch the documentary, people. But yeah, so these are universal themes, and they're very intentionally universal themes. And we always, certainly in the documentaries that we make, we go to a huge amount of effort to see them beyond the Irish experience. So you know, sort of get rid of Irish exceptionalism and sort of step outside and go, well, how would a French person think, how would an English person think of this story, and see Irish history in that context. And it really stands up, and it's an incredible amount of stories that incredible amount of history that we have lived through and succeeded. Well, anyway, I cut that bit.
Yeah. I suppose it's interesting as well, like a home audience, and somewhere like this, it's so, like, it's such a lovely festival because, you know, it celebrates Irish film in America. Do you feel there is a different, like, even energy, or, you know, kind of like a more warmness in a place where, you know, like, we're here kind of culturally to support Irish work, and then if you're kind of up against international, you know, all international films, do you feel like that changes as well, the way that your film is watched or the way that your film is interpreted?
I'm not sure I do think that. Yeah. But as I said earlier, like, if we screen something now and we screen it tomorrow, screen it the next day in the same city with the same sort of audience available, there's just going to be a different response.
Yeah.
But the most exciting screenings that come to mind are, you know, 1916 in Moscow, or Steps of Freedom, which is a history of Irish dance, but it tells the story of Irish history as well. We showed that in Nigeria earlier last year, and the response was just incredible. There's a little bit of West Africa in the documentary, but I was kind of embarrassed about that, and I apologise in advance in case I might be causing any offence without, you know, recognising that I could. That didn't happen at all. They were so interested. I mean, many of them hadn't heard of Ireland or didn't really know much about it, and yet they're watching this history and going, that's our story too. We get this. Yeah. We've also been oppressed. We also use dance and we use music to sort of encapsulate our culture and encapsulate our pride in ourselves. So if the story is universal, it's going to carry.
And is it more crack to, you know, okay, so your great Daniel O'Connell documentary is available to watch online, and I'll put the link for the RT player in with the podcast in the YouTube video. But in terms of like that communal viewing in a space with multiple people, like, is that more satisfying, or is it sort of nicer just to get it out into the world with as many eyeballs as possible?
That's it. That idea, that question, is something I'm spending an awful lot of time thinking about, and you know, because television's under siege, cinema is also having a lot of problems, right? So things are changing, and with the documentaries, for the last 2 or 3 years, we've gone to a lot of effort to have a series of screenings before it goes out on television. And there's a buzz in those rooms that is just incredible. And people, there's something different between a documentary and a movie, because a documentary, it's a truth which is being presented, and whether you agree with the truth or you want to argue with it, that's fascinating. Let's roll up our sleeves and get talking about it. That doesn't so much happen with a movie. You know, go, I like that actor, I like that, it didn't really land with me. But with a documentary, it's very different. Like, people are arrested intellectually, and they have things they want to say. And you can influence the conversation that's going on beyond the cinema. So yeah, I'm really, really buzzed about bringing these documentaries around the world to show them in rooms, to show them in spaces. We made a documentary called Our Blue World. It's an environmental documentary about the crisis of water across the planet. You see with the rain in Ireland recently, or the floods in different parts of the world, or the wildfires in California. And that documentary's just been picked up on National Geographic, but we spent 2 years travelling the world with it. We've shown it in the UN, we've shown it in the EU headquarters, we've also shown it there was one audience of 16 people in the bush in Australia under plastic tarpaulins. So that kind of outreach with documentaries is just so exciting, and I think it's what they're made for, particularly in the post-factual world. People are finding these things really interesting because they know the documentary is solid, like it's been made with generally in partnership with universities. Daniel O'Connell is made in partnership with University College Cork and the University of Notre Dame. And that's really important because it forces a rigor on us, but it also gives the documentary an intellectual heft as it goes out into the world. People know this is, there's no absolute objective truth, but this is close to validated by the highest scholarship in the world. And
what is the thing that you would consider to be your voice as a filmmaker? You know, that thread. You're very interested in digging deep into, you know, a lot of why the world is a certain way, but would you find like a unifying elements or a voice or style or anything like that you could be like, yeah, that's pretty much everything is on some level this?
There's a friend of mine who says that despite all the films you've made, you just keep making the same film. That he just tells me, you just keep making the same film, Ruán. So, and it's true. Like they all say the same thing. I'm fascinated by two things, like the incredible strength and just the brilliant spirit of humans everywhere. But then also how much we tend to undermine each other, and how cruel we can be to each other. So I find that relationship very, very interesting. That dichotomy very, very interesting. But there's always something in the human spirit that allows some of us, or allows us, if we push, to rise up through it. And you see that in the film Báite as well. I mean, for me, that final moment with Peggy in the pub, I'm not going to tell you why or where or whatever, but that is an embodiment of what all that happens in all the documentaries as well.
And how important is that now?
Be hopeful. Be hopeful. It's possible to be hopeful. It's funny with the documentary we're making on enslavement, and the enslavement of the millions of Africans. One scholar was reluctant to participate because he's going what difference is this going to make? And but we convinced him to take part because I pointed to Daniel O'Connell. I said he spent 50 years of his life, nearly every single day, struggling to achieve Catholic emancipation for people who were on their knees in the mud and couldn't help themselves. And nobody thought he'd succeed. And he did succeed. And okay, that was followed by the Irish famine, so you can say that, well, despite all his efforts, nothing changed massively. But if you look at Ireland today, 200 years after the work he began, you can say he succeeded. So things can take time, but it's very important that people speak up and people remain hopeful, and we struggle.
And in terms of, you know, your slate of projects,
as Daniel O'Connell said, agitate.
And I suppose that element of hopefulness, and it is there, that optimism, even though the, you know, elements of the subject matter are quite dark, I think there is that thread of humanity and acceptance underneath. But again, without giving too much away, but in terms of drama work, where would you like to lean into as well? Like, you did mention that, but as you know, you imagine you got like your blank checks. What are the maybe one or two stories that you'd really love to tell?
The story I'm obsessed with is a story of the interrelationships and intermarriage of white Irish and black formerly enslaved people in 5 Points in New York in the 1800s. I think there's something really interesting that happened there. In fact, I know there is. It was the emergence of music today that we love and dance today that we love happened at that place. Yeah. So I'm writing a film on that at the moment. And that again, you know, that story's got some darkness because, you know, the white Irish eventually many of them turned out to be more racist than anybody else, and treated the people who they'd lived side by side with for decades appallingly. But at the same time, that's not the story of all of them, and there's something beautiful that happened in there, and I think to be reminded of that and to be reminded of how wonderful it can be when different cultures come together and create art from that experience, something amazing emerges.
Amazing. Well, I better let you go to your screening. Thank you so much for chatting with us, and hope you enjoy them.
Thank you, Gemma.